Transmitting from the Mojave Wilderness in Joshua Tree, California, now is the time for Desert Oracle Radio, the voice of the desert.
Night has fallen on the desert, and we are now only 47 months away from 2030. It's also a new year, although the shine has already worn off a bit. Doesn't take long. Like when you buy a new car and a big tumbleweed blows across the highways so quickly and with such force that it smacks your fender and leaves a horrific wound right there on the front of the car, which is made of cheap plastic for the most part. And then the check engine light starts blinking and buzzards are circling overhead. Welcome to the desert. The Joshua Tree National Park Gateway Communities, as the Chambers of Commerce like to call the stretch of highway between Morongo Valley and 29 Palms, was thrown into the most outrageous chaos a week or so back, as the National Park Service had cruelly closed off the tourists' favorite route into the national park through the humble desert village of Joshua Tree, south down Quail Springs Road to the miles-long one-lane parking lot that ends at the Federal Attractions ticket booth. Why did this occur? The Park Service has built new ticket booths to accommodate all the traffic, all the visitors. I remember when there weren't any ticket booths. You could just drive through the park. There were signs posted with prohibitions on commercial trucks cutting through the park. I remember those. And every now and then, NPS or the Highway Patrol would park a law enforcement cruiser in the dark to ticket whatever commercial drivers thought they'd slip through just this once. Back in the early 90s, I saw a U-Haul truck pulled over just beyond the south entrance, and about a dozen guys lined up beside the moving van. The Border Patrol got them there. And what was I doing there? I don't know, probably just driving. But sometimes I'd just drive all night from wherever I lived in California through various darkened state and national parks, up and down the interstates. 3 a.m. steak and egg breakfast at the good old truck stops with good food. Maybe buy a Best of George Jones cassette for $2.99 on the way out, and a Snapple iced tea for the road.
Desert Oracle Radio.
Anyway, about our new ticket booths. Disgruntled tourists were forced to enter the national park on the 29 Palms side all week, or through the even more desolate southern entrance, somewhere off a lonesome exit of Interstate 10, way down in what we call the low desert. A few things are lower than the low desert. We don't care if Retired celebrities and ex-presidents and golf pros live down there in gilded mansions with servants and cooks and investment advisors. But compared to us, they might as well live in a pile of trash on Salvation Mountain, where the fetid stench of the Salton Sea hangs heavy each day. We may not have much money up here, but we've got altitude. We can still go outside in the merry month of May without the skin cooking right off our heads. National park officials have since reopened the main artery into the national park, and we've had beautiful weather ever since. Maybe it's all connected. Even when the most popular entrance is closed, people who love our national park will tell you the Cottonwood Springs side is very nice. Less people, good camping, good hiking when it's not 110 degrees. That's the south entrance, not far off Interstate 10. But it's the scary side of Interstate 10, deep into no man's land, some 30 miles past the last lights of the Coachella Valley. Boy, it gets real dark out there real quick. One minute you're looking at multiple billboards saying last exit for Cinnabon or whatever, and then you're way out there. Our new Coachella National Monument is somewhere out in the darkness, too. Somewhere in the darkness to your right. If you're driving eastbound on I-10, Eagle Mountain rising somewhere up to the left. And if you're lucky, you will safely make it across the desert, across the Colorado River and into Arizona, where your reward is clearly visible. Gas for $2 and change. And now it's time for Desert Oracle's strange and unusual facts, mostly about the desert, the wilderness, critters and criminals, etc. But we do have our wild card fact file, which I keep safe within my old Stratton 4-point Ranger hat box, hermetically sealed with Scotch tape. On every radio broadcast, as our listeners know, I pull a wild card fact from the hat box, but I never identify it as such. The miracle and mystery of the Joshua Tree blooms. If you're in the Mojave High Desert this month, you've likely noticed some of our Joshua trees are beginning to bloom. Here and there, you'll see a big cream-colored cone of flowers atop a few of these beloved yucca trees. And everybody seems to know for sure what causes early blooms, late blooms, no blooms. Back in 2019, some trees started blooming in late October, tricked by very cold and very wet storm systems, some people say. A certain amount of snow or freezing nights might do it. And sometimes it's springtime in the desert not long after New Year's. In a normal year with enough rain or snowfall, February is usually when we start noticing the JTs are blooming. But late season snow and cold can trigger a bloom all the way into April or even early May. I've seen that myself. more than a few times over the past 40 years of wandering these deserts. Because the California deserts are subject to the same wet and dry winter patterns and cycles as the rest of the state. And nobody knows exactly why Joshua trees bloom like crazy after some cold, wet winters, but not others. There tends to be about 3 years between the big blooms. And that irregular cycle doesn't coincide necessarily with big wildflower blooms. The desert keeps us guessing. And the Mojave loves to humble the self-proclaimed expert. My favorite reply to most of these questions is, it's a mystery, isn't it? Once those cones of cream-colored flowers are fertilized by the loyal and hungry yucca moth, you can expect those date-sized seed pods to sprout and eventually fall on your head while you're ducking under a Joshua tree that reaches over the trail. Our sandy-colored antelope ground squirrels with the racing stripes do a lot of the work in planting these Joshua tree seeds. And remember this, a Joshua tree is also a yucca tree, but the Mojave yucca is not a Joshua tree. The Mojave yucca is also called the Spanish dagger. And the soundscapes on this program, as always, are composed and recorded by our own RedBlueBlackSilver. Speaking of the color black, here's an interesting fact about black widow spiders. A single egg sac from a black widow spider can hatch up to 900 black widow baby spiders. Think about that next time you notice a silky little spider egg sac stuck on the camping gear you just brought home from the desert. Maybe just throw all that stuff out. Stay in a motel next time. Although black widows like motel rooms too. Not as much as campground porta potties, though. The southerner hippie country rock legend Graham Parsons reportedly drank at least a half dozen double tequilas, that's a dozen singles, before taking a big shot of morphine at the Joshua Tree Inn, which is where he died shortly thereafter, more than half a century ago. I believe it'll be 53 years this summer. The local part of his legend is just the last part of this life, the dying. As far as we know, he never wrote or recorded or performed any of his music out here. Wasn't much of a hiker, less even of a naturalist. Although he'd drive into the monument on that last trip and enjoy the views. There are stories that he sat in with a bar band somewhere around here, location unverified. Graham Parsons was so bloated and swollen by the time he died out here at the young age of 26 that he could barely sit upright on a motorcycle. But his death did create an aura of mystery around the singer who left both the Byrds and the Burrito Brothers. And that helped with the marketing of his final album, Grievous Angel, which made it all the way to the bottom of the Billboard charts, reaching number 195 before fading into obscurity. His harmony singer on that record, Emmylou Harris of Birmingham, Alabama, made a point of promoting his music throughout her long and ongoing career. She has outlived him by 52 years so far. One more thing. Graham Parsons wasn't declared dead in Joshua Tree, but in Yucca Valley, home to the High Desert Memorial Hospital, way up at the south end of Cholla Avenue. We got a nice big earthquake in Joshua Tree National Park. A weekend back now, 2 weekends back now, or 4.9 that felt a lot stronger for those of us right on top of it. Like anyone camping at the Jumbo Rocks or Ryan or Hidden Valley campgrounds. And then to remind us who's in charge, we got about 300 aftershocks. Now, I was on duty way up in the Great Basin during the initial quake swarm, which occurred due north of Indio and Coachella within the southwestern part of the national park. And because I am increasingly uninterested in looking at a phone or a computer for any reason outside of absolutely required work, I had no idea. Got back here on Tuesday night and was catching up with a week or 3 of email and threats and overdue bill notices. And there was one of those big triple jolts. First, the house sort of lurched to the south. And then there were various bangs and snaps from the beams and whatever's left of my foundation here. And then my glass of bourbon nearly slid off the rickety stack of tables and benches I use for a standing desk. Luckily, I saved the bourbon. Saved it for me. This was a shallow tumbler, as they say down at the USGS office. Barely 2 miles beneath the rocky surface, just below Keys View. That's maybe why it felt so violent up here in the Morongo Basin, especially around Yucca Valley at the national park boundary. This desert quake swarm had many of us talking about the big one some 33 years ago and running up the same complex series of fault lines from the San Andreas. But it wasn't on the lander's fault responsible for that great shake of June 28, 1992. The violent 7.3 quake that broke Highway 247 like a twig, knocked down the front of the Yucca Bowl, injured 400 people, and even claimed a single young life when a brick chimney collapsed inside a house up in Landers. I've read reports that 2 people died of heart attacks as well, but that's kind of hard to prove. Like if I choked to death or whatever during an earthquake, is the earthquake really to blame? Maybe a little bit. One nice thing about living in a rural area with mostly single-story houses and cabins that are often acres apart is an earthquake can't do much more than shake it all up. You just go outside for a minute until it's over. Or you can walk around the house like I do, examining stress points, thresholds, little cracks in the wall here and there. But then you nod to yourself and say, well, that's not going anywhere. We did an episode on the history and geology of the Landers quake some years back. It was episode 10, way back in 2017. It's called the Landers quake of 1992. If those AI demon agents actually worked, you could probably just ask your phone to play it. But if you do that, you'll likely get some back talk about how you're actually referring to The Larry Sanders Show, which premiered on HBO in August 1992. This is Desert Oracle Radio, and we are featuring strange and unusual facts about the Mojave Desert. For instance, the death of mountain man John Muir. Now, we usually avoid speaking of death and hospitals on this show. We get enough of that in the real world. We also generally avoid the topic because it leads to morbid fascination, which is unhealthy. Many of us know John Muir for his large and crucial role in the creation of Yosemite National Park from the old Yosemite and Mariposa land grants, and for his influential writings on the High Sierra and other wilderness jewels of the West. But John Muir also loved our Mojave and Great Basin and Colorado deserts. He was, in fact, on another long stay at his daughter's ranch house in the Mojave Desert outside the little town of Daggett near Barstow, when a lingering influenza came back hard and had him at death's door. He had gone down to the desert in part to breathe the clean, dry air. Well, his daughter insisted that her husband take him the long, long way to the hospital in Los Angeles, where he died alone in his room on Christmas Eve. Handwritten pages of his Alaska book manuscript scattered on his bed. Age 76. And that's our regular reminder to let your loved ones die in peace at home, in nature, on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, surrounded by their family and dogs. Or alone if that's what they want, but not in a hospital. Anything but the cold, lonesome hospital bed. Dignity in life, dignity in death. Let's at least try. From a letter by John Muir, dated August 5, 1878, Austin, Nevada. Dear Doctor, your kind note of the 24th was received the other day, and your discussion of fruits and the fineness in general of civilized things takes me at some little disadvantage. From the switch, we rode to the old Fort Churchill on the Carson, and at the lower end of Mason Valley, we're delighted to find the ancient outlet of Walker Lake, down through a very picturesque canyon to its confluence with the Carson. It appears, therefore, that not only the Humboldt and Carson, but the Walker River also poured its waters into the Great Sink towards the end of the glacial period. From Fort Churchill, we pushed eastward between Carson Lake and the Sink. Boo! How hot it was, riding in the solemn, silent glare, shadeless, waterless. Here is what the early immigrants called the 40-mile desert. Well marked with bones and broken wagons. Strange how the very sunshine may become dreary. How strange a spell this region cast over poor mortals accustomed to shade and coolness and green fertility. After crossing the Sink, We ascended the mountain range that bounds it on the east, 8,000 to 10,000 feet high. How treeless and barren it seemed. From Amboy to Zizix and across the Great Mojave Wilderness. This is Desert Oracle Radio. Heard on Joshua Tree's own KCDZ, 107.7 FM in the high desert, Friday nights at 10 p.m. And supported by good listeners like you at desertoracle.com or patreon.com/Desert Oracle. RedBlueBlackSilver made the soundscapes heard on this and some 260 other episodes in our archives, available as podcasts. To support his work at the RedBlueBlackSilver Bandcamp site. So the weather was fine, it was spring-like, and all of a sudden it got cold again, real cold. I was just standing outside, listening to the owls, to the pair of owls. 3 or 4, maybe 5 years ago, I recorded on a Christmas Eve broadcast, or near that time, Christmastide, that my old great horned owl had finally found love. He was up there hooting so low and solemn for so long. And Christmas time came, and a lady owl was answering him back. And they've been at it ever since. Bad time for the rats around here. They triangulate, you know. Not the rats, they just run. The owls. Thank you for listening to Desert Oracle Radio. And good night from the voice of the desert.